Hello guys, welcome to my video of my top 10 favourite TV series of 2024. I know this video is quite late, but you need time to watch all the TV series you want to watch, so there's still many that I would still like to see that aren't on the list, and that is the reason why I didn't make this video for 2022 or 2023. I might go back and make that soon, because there was still some major disappointments that are not going to get on this list, even though I did see them. The Umbrella Academy Season 4, really enjoyed every episode, except the finale, which was unfortunately terrible, which is why it's not on this list. Very disappointing ending to a really good TV series. Star Wars The Acolyte, I really enjoyed a couple of the episodes, but overall a disappointment. And What We Do in the Shadows Season 6 is probably my only honorable mention, because I really enjoyed the finale. Number 10, Star Wars Skeleton Crew. This is kind of a cheat because not all of this series finished in 2024. There is a few episodes that did come out early 2025, but I needed something to fill the 10th spot, and I did really love Skeleton Crew. This was such a fun, light Star Wars show that brought the magic and the awe back into Star Wars, and the childlike wonder too, and it's a concept I've always wanted to see. Yes, it's kind of Goonies and Stranger Things in space. It's a bunch of kids on a pirate adventure, because they're not just having fun. It's basically the closest thing we have to a Star Wars comedy, but there's also a lot of really good emotional value, and people kind of who are also after this treasure are able to manipulate them in all different interesting ways, and that leads us into Jude Law's character Jod, who is a great character in the Star Wars universe, and I really hope we see him again. Do I think we need to see these kids again? No, but I'd love to see more adventures with them. But if it is just this one miniseries, it does everything it should do, and it's filled with great action set pieces, actually looks fantastic, brilliant musical score. It's nothing groundbreaking for its franchise, but it's just a standalone space kids adventure. It ignites that original awe to all who grew up with Star Wars, and also gives it to the new Star Wars audience. I wish more people watched this. It's really damn great. It's nice to have something in the Star Wars franchise. It doesn't have too many connections to what's before, but also captures its magic perfectly. At number 9 is another Disney Plus surprise, and that is Agatha All Along. Now, a lot of Marvel series have been very disappointing recently, but we do get the odd really great one, such as Loki or Moon Knight, and Agatha All Along, I think, is generally one of Marvel's better series. I don't know how it got to this place, but it is. WandaVision was also great, but it didn't really fully come together in the end, and I thought this did. Unlike WandaVision, this kind of saves its emotional baggage for the very end, after its conclusion, and emotionally recontextualizes the story of Agatha we've seen so far. Watching her, don't want us to succeed, but you want her to change. Such an interesting protagonist, because you generally hate her as you're watching her, but also so fascinated by her too. But it wouldn't work without a bunch of great other characters, and I loved how each episode has its own style and focused on a different character, and you really didn't know which one was making it out, and it focuses on each character's past traumas. It's able to have that fun, kind of horror comedy, witch vibes in like classic 80s movies like Hocus Pocus, and if you love that, you will love this. It also has kind of some Wizard of Oz like narrative where they're on this journey, Witch's Road, that is very dreamlike. The only major issue is the amount of times they played that damn witch chant. Nowhere near as bad as the witch chant from The Acolyte, but I can't believe they played that and didn't play the song Agatha All Along once. But still, I really liked this. It was a fun, twisted journey down the Witch's Road, and it was generally one of Marvel's more creative and interesting series. Number 8 is Squid Game 2. Now, I was very looking forward to this simply because of how surprising and shocking the first season of Squid Game was. While Season 2 does lose some of that initial shock value of them games, it surprisingly doesn't just recycle the same structure of the other season. The games are still fun and they're enjoyable, but they're not quite as much of the focus this time around. The focus is more on taking down the games and sort of finding new ways to explore its divided themes and conflicts, especially with a very interesting exploration of the villain, the person who created these games, and kind of making him both sympathetic, but also it makes you hate him more at the same time. The only reason Squid Game 2, I think, falters a little more than Squid Game Season 1, even though it does remove some of the things I disliked about Season 1, is the fact that it is a bit inconclusive. It kind of just ends, and there could have been a bit more wrap-up. However, we thankfully don't have to wait too long for the conclusion. Number 7 is The Boys Season 4.
The code name again?
The Boys.
Oof. Who came up with that shit?
Now, is Season 4 probably the weakest season of The Boys? Yes. But do I still love The Boys and think this is still a great season? Also, yes, this is still a really damn entertaining season of The Boys that has just the same level of complete shock value, gore, crude humour, and satire, even a bit further on the satire. However, it doesn't really progress the plot as much as it could have done, but I feel like it's saving everything for the final season. This is really that penultimate season that towards the end sets up all the pieces. But what season 4 did exceptionally well was significant amount of character work, and the way it pushes all these characters to their limits allows them to change in surprising ways, whether some have redemption arcs or some have a villain arc. Season 4 was able to be a much more character-focused season than the last few ones, even if it was a bit light on the plot, which still makes it a great series, and I still love The Boys. It's still one of my favourite, most provocative superhero content out there. Still had some absolutely killer episodes and scenes. Number 6, Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, Season 2. Now, this is coming from someone who actually did enjoy Season 1, despite it being painfully slow, but it did eventually kick off in the last few episodes, which were really damn great. And this season, whilst kind of has the same structure, where it builds towards the final few episodes, which are then fantastic, the rest of the series feels a lot more necessary and interesting than Season 1, and I think it's a vast improvement over Season 1, not just because the last two episodes really packed in a lot of action, but they felt more gritty, less polished, even though the series always looks magnificent and expensive, which it is. But what this season did massively much better is following Sauron. Please, seeing him manipulate everyone around him. Whilst Rings of Power will never be as good as his original films, I think it's much better than The Hobbit, and I think this is a much better season than Season 1. This is mainly just set up for whatever big conflict happens in Season 3, but this left me a lot more excited to see that conflict. I generally think this is becoming a pretty great prequel. Number 5 is X-Men 97. I love the original movies, and I quite enjoy the old animations from the 90s, but X-Men 97 might be my favourite piece of X-Men content ever. It is absolutely phenomenal. It is dark, it is twisted, it is filled with world building, interesting character decisions, seeing characters being ripped and torn apart, seeing the community of mutants developed upon, seeing characters make difficult decisions that affect the world around them to a disastrous effects. If they ever decide to reboot X-Men in live action, I want something like this. This kind of feels like it's for an older audience who grew up with that stuff. But this also works perfectly as its own thing. It really does capture that classic 90s cartoon, but it feels much more for adults. And it's some of the best Marvel TV I think I've ever seen. Number 4 is Fallout.
Well, now that is a very small drop in a very, very large bucket of drugs.
But thankfully, this story and these characters aren't based on the video game, only the world is, which means basically this can be viewed as its own thing and doesn't have to be massively compared to the games, which makes it stand on its own much better than other video game adaptations. But thankfully, this is also just a great, fun, apocalyptic TV series on its own. It's genuinely an absolute blast because it's able to both have the tension and horror of an apocalyptic world, but it's also able to interject it with dark humor. And this comical innocence and absurdity makes Fallout something special in the apocalyptic landscape. Visually, it's absolutely stunning, and that classic 50s retro futuristic style really does complement it, and kind of satire on the 50s lifestyle and the futuristic lifestyle. It's kind of a mesh of both, but what makes it unique is that it blends that with absurd comedy. At number 3 is Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live. The Ones Who Live was a perfect epilogue to my favourite TV series of all time, and thankfully The Walking Dead I've become a massive fan of recently. I've just finished watching the show, and I could just go straight into Ones Who Live right after I finished season 11, and it really made it feel like the conclusion of the series, which it basically is. I mean, it circles all the way back round from season 1 with a similar structure, tied to 6-episode season, and the original first season of Walking Dead was all about Rick Grimes waking up in an apocalyptic world and trying to get back to his family, and this is Rick Grimes waking up in the new world, trying to get back to his family. But I do think this would have been better as a full season of The Walking Dead, or if it was kind of merged with the final season, and I think that would have been kind of where the perfect ending of the show would have lied. Done some of the best cinematography, world building, and character building that The Walking Dead has ever done, and it's by far some of my favourite Walking Dead content we've ever got, especially those first few episodes. They're two of the best TV characters of all time. Rick Grimes is probably the best protagonist of TV history, and this adds such a level of depth to him. It's an emotional story that beats these characters down to their worst positions we've seen them in so far, whilst also having this much larger scale than we've seen before. You can definitely tell that this was meant to be a movie. The ending was satisfying, even if a tad rushed. If you want a nice, satisfying, full circle ending to The Walking Dead, I think this provided it, and is a lovely counterpart to this original series. At number 2 is The Penguin. This was very close to getting to the top spot, but this was an absolute masterpiece-worthy miniseries, and it's exactly how you craft not only a crime series that has multiple layers to it and making you root for kind of the worser of two evils, but what it also does is craft a perfect villain standalone story that makes you root for the villain and then recontextualizes it and makes you kind of forget how slimy and evil the character is. When it explores the Penguin's backstory later on in the series, it doesn't do it in a sympathetic way. What makes the Penguin more interesting is its side characters. Sophia Falcone steals the show, and seeing it from her perspective later on, it changed the entire show for me. And also a character like Victor, something that a lot of other mob stories doesn't do, which is have a character who's kind of fish out of water that you can actually follow. That gives a much more relatable perspective to a world that's this grimy and real. And surprisingly, while this isn't another superhero world with the Batman in, this felt so real and raw. And the first episode is kind of its own standalone thing, but then every other episode builds upon it brilliantly, and where every character has interwoven motivations. They're making decisions that are difficult but benefit themselves in their own twisted way. And Colin Farrell is completely unrecognizable as the Penguin yet again. And at my number 1 is Baby Reindeer.
I really don't know where it's going to end. I think one of us is going to have to die now.
Now, this isn't necessarily a series I'm going to want to rewatch much in the future, or even at all. It was painfully heavy and thought-provoking and anxiety-inducing, but thankfully it's able to kind of start quite entertaining, with a bit of discomfort, but as it goes on, it constantly gets more tragic, and the way traumatic events are unraveled throughout the rest of the series really recontextualizes everything as these hidden parts of the story come true and makes you rethink the characters in so many different ways. But what's brilliant about this series is that amongst loads of other true stories that may have been more fabricated, this series really allows you to experience it with the eyes of the person who actually experienced it. Having the lead actor be the actual person who went through this basically has to relive his own trauma for his performance, and so it doesn't feel like a performance at all. How the cycle of trauma and paranoia kind of goes around, and it's surprisingly able to tell a much more authentic story that way while still being very creative, and it's able to interject a lot of kind of fun dark humor at the start to kind of get you kind of enjoying the show, even though it's still kind of uncomfortable. But then unraveling the heavy stuff later on really does make you so invested in the series emotionally, and it's a true story that generally should be out there. Phenomenal series, and you should definitely watch it if you haven't seen it. There you go, there's my favourite TV series of 2024. Again, I might still make the video for the other 2 years that I missed, but make sure to comment your list down below. Let me know what your favourite TV series of the year are. And of course, thank you for watching, and goodbye.